In the United States, tensions are rising as Title 42 rolls out anti-delays comes into effect, with a battery of regulations that aims at limiting migration flow. In Palestine, yet a new attack by Israeli forces on the Gaza Strip has killed 3 more people. This makes a total of 45 local kills by Israeli airstrikes in the past 3 days of constant violence. Pakistan's Supreme Court has ordered the immediate release of the former Prime Minister Imran Khan after considering his arrest to be illegal. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm your new anchor, Heidi Maurel, from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In the United States, tensions are rising as Title 42 rolls out Thursday night anti-delays comes into effect, with a battery of regulations that aims at limiting migrant flow. In this context, the U.S. border with Mexico has been reinforced with thousands of soldiers, barbed wire, tech and technical teams. Title 42, which is now coming to an end, was reinforced during the pandemic and allowed for the expedited deportation of migrants. The states of New York and Chicago declared a state of emergency early this week over Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott's move to boost migrants to Democrat-run cities as a protest to President Biden's immigration strategy. After Title 42 expires, Title 8 will come into effect. While this policy is supposed to offer a legal pathway to asylum seekers, the Biden administration has backed a series of measures aimed at curbing immigration, similar to the policies promoted by Trump that the Democrat had promised to repeal during his election campaign.
42 runs south, meaning as soon as Thursday, Title A goes into effect. Title A is an aggressive policy in which they detain you if you don't have document or you don't have a valid asylum claim. But if you come back after deportation, yeah.
In this context, the Mexican government's delegation visited the White House on Wednesday with proposals regarding the immigration flow ahead of the expiration of the Title 42. According to the Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs, one of the proposals was to increase funding to address the root causes of migration, and another was to strengthen dialogue within the region. The text that was presented stated that the delegation analyzed new collaboration policies to address the causes of the migratory phenomenon within the framework of the Showing Opportunities program in Central America and the Caribbean. Mexico emphasized the importance of expanding joint work with international organizations and the need to increase labor mobility channels, as well as protection policies to move in the right direction towards a more orderly, safe, and regular migration flow. Bolivian President Luis Arce said on Wednesday that he was open to using the Chinese yuan for international trade, citing similar move by Argentina and Brazil to use the Asian countries' currency for transactions with China.
Countries including Argentina, Brazil, Arab countries, and others are already reaching agreement with China, the main supplier of manufactured goods in the world, to trade in China's yuan rather than the US dollar, which is an objective acknowledgement of the geopolitical changes we are experiencing and of the new pole that is emerging in the world.
China and Ecuador signed on Wednesday the Free Trade Agreement, FTA, negotiated in just 3 months. Beijing and Quito closed negotiations on the agreement in December to improve bilateral trade, which in 2022 reached a record $13.90 billion, according to the National Central Bank. According to the Ecuadorian Trade Minister, Julio José Prado, the agreement will allow the South American country to sell 99.6% of its products without tariffs. Despite its signing on Wednesday, the agreement still has to pass through the Constitutional Court and the legislature, where reports were requested to review the decision. On Ecuador, on Wednesday, a clandestine drilling in the Trans-Ecuadorian oil pipeline systems caused an oil spill that led to the paralyzation of the crude oil transportation in the Andean country. The event took place in Santa Cecilia Parish, and the pipeline operations were temporarily suspended to mitigate the effect of this leak. The director of the state company in charge of the pipeline clarified that the measure will not affect exports, since there is no oil in storage tanks at the Balao station, in the province of Esmeraldas. The Trans-Ecuadorian pipeline system is the main oil pipeline in the Andean country and currently has a transport capacity of 360,000 barrels per day through the almost 500 kilometers of pipeline that extend through the Amazons, highlands, and coasts. Let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The United Kingdom government on Thursday announced that it will send Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine, becoming the first country to provide longer-range weapons to the Zelensky administration.
The UK is donating Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine. Storm Shadow is a long-range, conventional-only precision strike capability. It complements the long-range systems already gifted, including HIMARS and Harpoon missiles, as well as Ukraine's own Neptune cruise missile and longer-range missions elsewhere gifted. The donation of these weapon systems gives Ukraine the best chance to defend themselves against Russia's continued brutality.
German labor unions on Thursday called for railway workers to stage a 50-hour strike early next week to bolster its calls for an inflation-related pay rise. Germany's Rail and Transport Workers Trade Union, the EFG, called for its more than 200,000 members to walk off the job from 10 p.m. on Sunday until midnight on Tuesday to keep their demands for a rise of 12%. The walk-off is the third stage by railway workers this year and comes in the wake of a strike in other sectors. The strike also came amid a worrisome situation in the country. Despite Germany's annual inflation rate has declined from the levels it reached late last year, it remains high with a 7.2% in April. Armenia and Azerbaijan blamed each other for an exchange of fire in a border area on Thursday, in which 4 military were injured. In a statement, Armenia's defense ministry reported that 4 of its soldiers were wounded in the clashes after a provocation from the Azerbaijani forces. It further accuses Azerbaijan of having once again violated the ceasefire agreement with large-caliber weapons. On the other hand, Azerbaijan accused Armenia of initiating the aggression by attacking its position from the town of Sotsk and of causing serious injuries to a military. The clashes came amid increased diplomatic talks between the two South Caucasus nations, aimed at bringing them back from the brink of another all-out conflict over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. The Spanish government approved on Thursday measures worth more than $2 billion to alleviate the impact of a prolonged drought that has affected its agricultural sector. Isabel Rodríguez García, a spokeswoman of the Spanish government, highlighted that the country's water reserves are below 50% of their capacity on average, while levels have fallen to approximately 25% in Andalusia and Catalonia. Rodriguez also highlights that the House amidst the adoption of urgent measures in agricultural and hydraulic matters in view of the deterioration of the sector as a consequence of the armed conflict in Ukraine and the drought. In April, the Intergovernmental Panel of Experts on Climate Change published a report that noted Spain that will be much warmer and drier by 2050. Due to water stress, the Iberian Peninsula will have to face a challenge in which water will be a scarce commodity, the study added.
Our goal is to increase the volume of water Spain uses from this non-conventional source, water reuse, from the current 10% to 20% by 2027. The situation of accumulated drought and reduced rainfall in recent years, and, in particular, in this first quarter of 2023, is sensitive and delicate in the river basins of the Guadalquivir, the Andalusian basins, the inland basins of Catalonia, and those of the Guadiana. The Júcar and the Segura require special vigilance.
On Thursday, authorities in Canada announced that wildfires are slowly dying down in the western region of the country, thanks to cooler temperatures and rain coupled with the work of firefighters. However, they warned that in the province of Alberta, the danger remains latent. The release indicated that the number of evacuees due to the impact of the fire dropped to 24,000 from 30,000 and assured that in total 76 of the 110 wildfires remain active in the western Alberta province, 23 of which are still considered out of control. Colin Blair, Executive Director of the Alberta Emergency Management Agency, warned that although it has rained the last 24 hours, the situation may change due to dry conditions in many regions of western Canada. In the same context, members of indigenous communities have noted that in the northern part of Alberta province, indigenous people such as those of the Cree and Little Red River communities are deeply affected by these wildfires. Patty Hadju, Federal Minister of Indigenous Services, affirmed that there has been a hug loss of infrastructure while no loss of human life is reported. Hadju also assured that 4,000 people were evacuated and more than 150 homes were destroyed or demolished. According to the 2021 Canadian census, there are 1.8 million Indigenous people in Canada, representing 5% of the total population. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, more than 400 people have been killed in flash floods during the past week, making it one of the deadliest natural disasters in the country's recent history. In these centers, more bodies were recovered in the last few days after floods devastated Buchuchu and Yamukubi village in the Kalehe territory. Torrential rains, which began on Thursday, triggered landslide and caused rivers to break their banks, which led to devastating floods that have left hundreds dead and many more homeless. In some areas, it is estimated that up to 80% of the population has been affected. Likewise, drinking water sources and hygiene facilities such as latrines has been destroyed. And TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now turn from 33 different African countries through StarSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. On Thursday, China called on the United States to stop plundering the natural resources in Syria and withdraw its military forces from the country.
Urged the United States to withdraw its troops illegally stationed in Syria for so many years. We urge to stop forcing a plan to dump nuclear contaminated water into the sea and to stop provoking division and confrontation and using the banner of international rules to serve its own hegemony and self-interest.
On Thursday, in Palestine, a new attack by Israeli forces on the Gaza Strip killed 3 people. An Israeli drone attacked 2 apartments in the city of Khan Yunis, south of the Gaza Strip, killing 3 citizens and wounding at least 7 people. Palestinian authorities reported that among the fatalities was Major Ali Hassan and officers in the Al-Quds brigades. With these events, the death toll in the last 3 days of consecutive Israeli attacks on Gaza rose to 25, and the wounded almost reached 70. Gaza Strip is home to more than 2 million people, making it one of the most densely populated areas in the world, and it has been under an Israeli air, land, and sea blockade since 2007. Palestinians mourn the death of Islamic Jihad commander Ali Ghali and his brother Mahmoud, who were killed in an Israeli attack carried out by Israeli forces in the Gaza Strip during their funeral in Khan Yunis. Let's listen to Jamin Ghali, daughter of murderers Ali Ghali, after the crime committed by the occupation forces.
I was following the news and did not sleep in light of these circumstances. I was watching the news channels and heard that there was a bombing of a residential apartment in the town of Hamad, and I kept watching because I had relatives living there until I received the news that him, my uncle, and cousin had been murdered. The three of them had been killed together as they were all in the same apartment. It is a shock to all of us. My siblings started crying and no one could control their emotions. We were all in such a shock. I was waiting for him to return like he would in any other war, but this time he did not come back.
On Wednesday, the Palestinian ambassador to the UN condemned the killing of women and children in a series of Israeli strikes in the Gaza Strip.
We condemn this crime. We condemn those who committed these crimes, particularly killing large number of children and women. And we believe that it is the duty of the Security Council to condemn these crimes and to pronounce that those from the Israeli side who planned these crimes, who have committed these crimes, should face accountability and should pay for their crimes.
After 3 days of Israeli siege against the Gaza Strip, at least 14 Palestinian homes have been hit. On Thursday morning, the Al-Masri family searched through the rubble to recover their belongings after the destruction of their 3-story house in the city of Beit Lahia. After years of Israeli shelling in the region, this has become an all too familiar sense for hundreds of Palestinian families. Since the start of the latest Israeli offensive on the Gaza Strip, at least 14 houses have been hit by Israeli fighter jets, 10 of which were either partially or completely destroyed on the first day.
The Israeli army told the neighbors to evacuate their homes. The children heard that. The woman started screaming and we had to the children to our neighbor's house.
Pakistan's Supreme Court has ruled the arrest of former Prime Minister Imran Khan to be illegal and ordered for him to be immediately released. The top court's order came after Khan's legal team challenged his arrest by the National Accountability Bureau in a corruption case on Tuesday, triggering violent protests across the country and prompting the government to call out the army to help restore order. The former premier was arrested on a corruption charge and remained in custody in a culmination of months of political crisis during which he was waged a campaign of defense against the country's military establishment. However, the Supreme Court also instructed that 3E-Insaf party chief could remain under police protection at the police lines compound in Islamabad, where he was being kept since his arrest. And in Pakistan, the Islamabad police confirmed on Thursday that the arrest of dozens of senior members of the opposition Tehreek-e-Insaf party have ousted and recently imprisoned Prime Minister Imran Khan. Among those arrested are former Pakistani Foreign Minister Shahbaz Mahmood Qureshi, former Information Minister Fawad Chaudhry, both ministers in the ousted Khan administration. According to the police, the arrests were made from enacting arson and violent protest under a well-thought-out plan of the threatened police. Local press reported at least 8 people were killed, some 290 injured, and more than 1,900 arrested across Pakistan in clashes between thousands of protesters injured by the arrest of former minister, which took place on Tuesday, May 9. And we have come to the end of this You Brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. I am Heidi Maurel. Thank you for watching.